Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a little island show that tries to carry a big punch, and we cover important issues on the island in British Columbia, Canada, and the wide world, the universe. And across that great broad universe, all the way to distant planetary Saanich, is my co-host with the most, the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic. And Johnny, once again, there's so much going on. And one of the big stories we're going to deal with again is in Saanich.
You know, been a lot of discussion on our Facebook site around the new name for Mt.Doug Park. In fact, the mayor jumped in. There was so much dialogue. Robin, I'm really struggling with this particular aspect of what is clearly reconciliation efforts, is cultural reconciliation around name changes. I can understand name changes on primarily Indigenous land, primarily Indigenous owned areas. If there are some clearly Indigenous offensive names, I'm struggling with the purpose of why this has happened. I'm struggling with why this park, of all the parks, why did we have to go to this park to rename it? So I am in favor of cultural reconciliation. I'm also in favor of economic reconciliation. What about providing jobs and opportunities and ways for some of these disadvantaged Indigenous youth to get ahead? Where is that happening? Why are we focusing on a park? I have so many questions, as you can see. And so did our viewers. So did our viewers. In fact, the mayor got involved. Saanich Mayor Fred Haynes sent us the new street sign for the park. And as you can see, it has Piclos as the top in bold letters. And below, it says Mt.Doug Park, a little bit smaller, I might add. I mean, if this is a shared name, I'm not sure if people are okay with this idea. It's not that we're okay or not okay. I'm just wondering why. Why this now? Some of our viewers had wasted no time. In fact, not some, a ton. Had wasted no time telling us what they thought about this name change. Todd writes, stop the insanity. Quit renaming everything. It proves absolutely nothing.
And Richard wrote us, he wrote, if politicians were actually busy, they wouldn't have time to rename everything. And, there's a lot more comments to this, and I have to say very few of them were in favor. I think it's going to be a debate to see how people feel about this in the longer term. I even heard once a university professor, and we'll go unnamed at the moment because we don't want to dig too deep on this, suggesting Victoria needed a name change because it's too colonialist. What's more colonialist than Queen Victoria? So I think that this is a debate that's going to be ongoing on a number of fronts. Really respect the First Nations, believe that they should have a bigger stake and obviously be a bigger part of our community. If some name changes mean shared names, I don't have as big an issue, but I think this is a debate the community needs to have on a wider basis.
Yes,
anyway,
yes.
I think we're going to move on now and talk about a different aspect of the civic scene, because a major political player in Victoria is walking off the stage, John.
This is a good friend of ours. He attends numerous of the same networking meetings that we have, that being Jeff Young. He's been on council, on and off council over the past 30 years, mainly on, and he's not seeking re-election this time, and had some departing comments about the way council has been operating this past few years.
Particularly over the last term, there has been a really marked division of opinion about the council and the direction we're going. And while many people support it, obviously, many people feel that the council has made some pretty bad mistakes in attempting to solve the problems of the region and the province by ourselves.
Jeff Young certainly leaves big shoes to fill. and it's sad to see him leave, but he's been there 30 years. At some point, we need fresh eyes on these issues. So way to go, Jeff. You've done so much for the community, the wider community. Big thumbs up. Enjoy your well-deserved retirement.
He's a very reserved and thoughtful man, a quiet man. Ton of respect in the community, and it's all so well-deserved. He will be missed on whatever kind of council emerges this October. And that, many others are certainly wanting to join the political fray, and the civic election campaign is well underway. Generally this only really starts post-Labor Day. No, it's a rocking and rolling. I see that Matt Dell was out door knocking for a seat on council, and he came across a doorway sign. I just love this. I'm sure those familiar with social media have seen it. And this sign was very clear. Please don't knock. And here's exactly what it says. No soliciting. We're too broke to buy anything. We know who we are voting for. We have found Jesus. Seriously, unless you're giving away beer, please go away. Well, obviously, I love that. Giving away beer is a good way to open doors. So Matt, suggestion. I remember old Bill Vanderzem. Oh my God, does that ever date me? Promised $4 cases of beer, and he won a BC election. So, Robin, boy, do I understand how these things work, and who knows, maybe a beer will show up on my door one of these days. Hey, I understand an old work pal of yours has been jousting. He's been rumbling with City Hall.
That's right. It's interesting to see familiar faces and familiar names popping up periodically. I worked with Ed Watson at Czech Television back in the 1990s for several years. And what a great guy, and what a excellent reporter, a superb reporter. He anchored at Czech. He was a senior reporter, was a videographer, one of our first videographers. He also worked for many years at CBC. And he's also lived for many years out in Metchosin. And that's where he decided that things were going astray with this new talk of a natural gas ban. As he wrote a letter to the Times columnist, an op-ed, where he talked about the CRD decision to ban natural gas usage by 2025. In Ed's case, he was hoping to do a renovation at his home. He was going to allow his son and his partner to move into the house. He was going to do a renovation in the garage where he would live, and there was going to be natural gas involved, and it seemed like a great idea. And then, the city fathers step in, and suddenly it becomes way more expensive and way more difficult. And, Ed asked the question, how can politicians concern themselves so much with climate change while at the same time zealously calling for a reduction in the cost of living in Victoria, the cost of buying a home in Victoria? Housing affordability seems to be a number one topic with civic officials, along with environmental responsibility. And Ed wrote this very elegantly in his article. He said, I have to say we're quickly heading down that storied road, paved with good intentions. Our destination isn't the hell of a runaway climate change, but an equally unpleasant place where no one can afford a place to live.
What was fascinating, Robin, about this Ed's comments and intervention was how much reaction he got. And there was a considerable amount of pushback from municipal politicians to his comments. I mean, what's emerging out of our show today is the fact that we need to hear more sides of these issues. There's one side being presented, and then people angry about not having input to the other sides. And so we sought out some other opinions, and into the fray rides Casey Edge, the executive director of the Victoria Residential Builders Association. Let's zoom him in.
And now joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room for the first time is Casey Edge, here to address what's going on with the CRD, and the ban on gas installations in new buildings. And this is by 2025. Casey, great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And right out of the gate, the announcement seemed to come out of the blue. Were residential builders as surprised as Joe Public?
Yes. Well, we actually we knew that the CRD had initiated this. We had sent letters to the CRD explaining that municipalities don't have the research, expertise, resources to initiate building code changes. And so what has actually been proposed and passed by the City of Victoria and Saanich so far is that you must either go to zero carbon, which is basically a ban on natural gas by 2025, or build to step code 5, which is basically net zero and adds about $80,000 to $100,000 to the cost of a new home.
Casey, you've written that a ban on natural gas will drive our sky housing costs even higher. I remember when gas first came to Vancouver Island back in the 80s, everyone was very excited about the opportunity to burn clean fuel instead of oil in a lot of these older homes. Why has gas suddenly become so unpopular?
That's a good question, because if you look at some of the challenges that are happening, for instance, in Germany, that had relied on Russia for importing gas and how that's all changed. If you look at the costs, the sky-high costs in Britain right now, where they're calling it a humanitarian crisis due to the price of heating your home in Britain, the chickens are coming home to roost if you are cutting yourself off from affordable energy sources. And yes, natural gas is preferred to coal, oil, and other definitely larger contributions to carbon in our environment. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense at all. And what makes even less sense is when the CRD partners with FortisBC on renewable natural gas that they call it comes from the biogas in the Heartland landfill, but they call carbon neutral, and then they undermine their own project by initiating this ban on renewable natural gas.
It does seem there's a lot of cross-purpose work going on here. Casey, the BC government is allowing the LNG project to go ahead across northern BC to Kitimat. It's something that John Horgan was willing to support, even though there are people in his own party that have been opposed to it for quite some time. And, the environmental movement, it certainly wants to see fossil fuel development in totality ended. They'd like to see it stopped immediately. It doesn't look like that's going to be a policy of this current provincial government, but we do have this CRD action taking place. And of course, nobody likes global warming, but how dangerous would it be to continue using natural gas, in your opinion, into the future, at least into the near future?
Well, the reality is that we have to use the resources that are available to us to ensure health and safety. So we can't have, we already have a homelessness crisis in our region. The cost of housing in British Columbia is the highest in Canada, the average price of a home. As we put these regulatory challenges on housing, it's going to continue to increase the prices. I don't think it's any coincidence that we do have the highest average prices in Canada, because the BC government has a policy of municipal self-determination. In British Columbia, the reason we have 13 municipalities in a region of 400,000 people is because the BC government has a policy of reasonable regional planning for housing, infrastructure, LRT. That is secondary to what the 13 small councils want. It makes no sense at all. And so, for instance, Edmonton, in oil and gas country, started their LRT in 1974 with about the same population Victoria has today. And yet we have Oregon and others saying, well, we're not doing LRT out to the West Shore, which makes absolutely no sense since we have the rights of way.
Casey, profound remarks, outstanding. In his letter to Times columnist, I believe, former colleague of Robin's many years ago, in the Ed Watson says we may have a moral duty to reduce our emissions, but we also need to do some cost-benefit analysis. I think that's fantastic. Ed suggests people need to spend less time on virtue signaling on a virtual signaling road of good intentions. Do you agree that we need to be more practical in order to solve the housing crisis in our province?
Well, yeah, what Ed said is absolutely true, which is why I wrote a letter supporting what Ed said. The supply issue needs to be addressed every couple, 3 years, and province-wide, and we will get to net zero by 2032. And I was told, no, we're going to let the municipalities do what they want. The minister wants that. Well, I said, you understand that you're undermining the fundamental purpose of a building code, which is health and safety. It's not energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is important, but it's not the foundation of the building code. Health and safety is in consumer protection. They didn't care. Politicians can virtue signal all they want, manipulate the code, drive up the costs, whatever they want. We're not going to be on board. And that has been VRBA's position, and that's our reputation. If you propose something that makes no sense and undermines consumer protection, we're not on board.
Casey Edge, longtime friend, longtime contributor to the local housing scene, expresses his feelings that a lot of people have, that we shouldn't knee-jerk ourselves around to a solution, especially when it comes to climate change. Sure, obviously, all of us want to find out new ways to fuel our economy. All of us are being impacted by climate change, and so we're all interested. And clearly, we're trying to find ways to get away from oil and gas to reduce the carbon footprint. But man, oh man, can we somehow do this gradually with small steps, with total input from the community? Natural gas doesn't leave a big carbon footprint, and many of our viewers who have been following this story sure felt the same way, Robin.
Absolutely, John. It's interesting to hear what different people have to say about this issue, and we're interested always when we hear from old pals.
Yeah.
And I just heard from another old friend from my television days. As it happens, my news director, when I first started at Check TV back in ancient times, back in 1990.
Oh, they're not so ancient, Robin.
1980. This was the guy that I walked into his office and he looked at me and said, "Oh my goodness gracious, where did you come from?" But anyway, Tony Cox. And Tony was the news director when I first arrived at Check. I always thought that he was a team player. And to this day, I have a lot of admiration for the fact that he has stayed so in touch with the community. He was one of those little ferry drivers down in the Inner Harbor for a long time, and he's really stayed plugged in. So Tony continues to watch the news scene with keen interest, and he sent us a Facebook message about the potential banning of natural gas in Victoria by 2025. And Tony writes, "Much too fast. Just another ill-advised decision by this council. They should be more concerned about administrative matters and running the city, not setting major building codes." Mm-hmm. And again, great to hear from an old pro like Tony. And I should again mention this CRD initiative is being pushed and has been voted for in Victoria Council, Saanich Council, Central Saanich. Whether they keep going on this, maybe there'll be new councils after the elections this fall, and there may be some changes. We'll have to stay tuned on that. But now it's time to again shift topics. We're going to talk for a moment or two about another veteran journalist, Jonathan Manthorpe.
Robin, that's fascinating. It's something interesting that we didn't interview Jonathan from those small ferries, because so many of ex-politicians and journalists are driving those ferries around in the city harbor. We need to do a rumble room from the city harbor on one of those ferries. Nonetheless, fascinating discussion with Jonathan Manthorpe, who wrote The Claws of the Panda. It's a book about the current relationship between Canada and China. Amongst all the stuff that's going on, Ukraine and the States, and blah, 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 there's still this massive activity and consequences of this activity between Canada and China. We mentioned last week on our show, for those that are watching, listening, that Jonathan would be on the show. Certainly, we have had an extensive interview. I was just transfixed by what he had to say. But because of time restraints and some breaking news, we're saving his main remarks for next week. But the good news is, Robin, we have a sneak preview for you right now.
We do indeed. We did ask Jonathan Manthorpe what his feelings were about offshore investment and how that has affected, well, a lot of things, including our housing market and our sky-high housing prices. And he said originally in the late 80s, when Hong Kong reverted over to the Chinese, a lot of Hong Kong money came to British Columbia, was heavily invested in real estate, and that started a spark of activity. But he doesn't believe that that's what sustained this rapid growth. He believes it was the spark. But he does also say a much bigger problem has been hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars that have come to Canada, and it has come through casinos and businesses and real estate. And it's money laundering. Canada's been very slow to react.
We've made ourselves a global laughingstock. I mean, we really are one of the money laundering centers of the world. And it's not just money from China that's been pouring into Canada. It's from Russia, it's from Iran, it's from Saudi Arabia, it's from many, many places, from India, because Canada has made itself a beautiful place to hide money and to hide assets. And we've done it by deregulation, a lot of it, or the lack of application of regulations. I mean, we have this agency, FinTrack, which is meant to track all large amounts of suspicious money coming into the country, but the organization has no teeth. It only tells people about stuff. It only tells the Mounties about stuff if the Mounties ask. I mean, it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. And the gambling is a very dramatic story, and we've all heard about the hockey bags full of cash, which is sort of recycled drug money being given to high value gamblers coming in from China. But that's not the real problem, and the real problem goes to corruption. The real problem, according to all the sources I've looked at, is double or false accounting by Canadian companies in their partnerships with Chinese companies.
Very interesting guy. So lots more to hear from Jonathan Manthorpe next week, and a lot around China's influence on our local political scene, our business landscape, and the ways that they are able to do this influencing that really, I think, are going to surprise a lot of people, John.
Robin, this was a great interview. It was a very educational, really opened my eyes. So I encourage all of the many viewers that watch us. In fact, guess what? We broke 600,000 viewers. Robin, are you kidding? I mean, it's starting to get to that number, like light years. 20 light years. Whatever. You don't really know how much that is. That's a lot of people have been watching what we have to say and muck around with every week. And in fact, they're doing that in the sort of usual ways that we tell at the end of every show, that being our Facebook site, that being our Twitter page, that being our YouTube page. Man, we're getting some really wacko comments on our YouTube page lately. But anyway, I'm sure those are just, those bots saying stuff. We also have a place, if you don't comment on any of those things, you can come onto our Facebook News and Views page and post your viewpoints, of which many of you do. And then we also have Instagram, and we continue to participate in the world's craziest online platform, that being TikTok. So if you follow our show, and many of you do, if you like our show, and many of you do and don't, send us your messages and comments. Anyway, today's been a ton of fun. I've so enjoyed it. Must be the end of the summer. I'm just full of piss and vinegar here. But meanwhile, I now have to look after North Tulip. And as the mayor. And until next time, as the mayor of North Tulip, sorry, Fred, mayor of North Tulip. And so until next time, I remain your faithful, Croatian sensation, Johnny Jurisic.
And, you know, John, you could have your name on top as John Jurisic, and underneath in brackets, it could say Mayor of North Tulip. It would be a way to, you know, really feel that you're a part of the whole scene and the whole trend. I'm Robin Adair.
That's a great idea.
I'm Robin Adair. I'm full of good ideas, and rumble on.